Backwoods Paranormal Real Talk, brought to you by Backwoods Paranormal. You can find us on our Facebook page at Backwoods Paranormal of Central Pennsylvania, and there's also a link to our YouTube and Patreon. We got a guest on here today, Mark. Mark, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, and we are a spiritual-based resolution team. So basically what that means is we take cases for people who believe they have some kind of activity and they want it stopped. So we work with a couple psychic mediums to go out and try to identify what's causing the activity, along with doing physical investigations that a lot of people are familiar with, much like you see on TV. And we combine the two together and, work on a plan to try to stop the activity where we can. And our group started back in 2007, but we really got rolling around 2008. And we have a variety of different members from professional occupations, people who already are used to working with people in their regular line of employment. And my background, I have a psychology background, a Bachelor of Psychology, and I'm a 25-year veteran of the Pennsylvania State Police. And I did a variety of work within the state police, including the typical patrol duties that most people would recognize. I worked 10 years undercover for Vice Narcotic Unit. I was a detective for 6 years and a public information officer working with the public and the media on, high profile incidents where, we need a PR person to speak with the media. So I have a background in law enforcement. And when I retired, I became a private detective, and I'm also a school resource officer at a local school. So it was really quite a change going from working with the state police to working with, grade school level kids. And honestly, it's a lot more fun.
Probably a lot more relaxing too at that.
Yes, much more so. A lot less paperwork.
So what got you interested in the paranormal field?
It's something that started, I got to go all the way back to probably my early teens, when I didn't live in a haunted house. I'm not a psychic medium, but I did have a weird experience out in my backyard. I lived out in the country and didn't really have a lot of neighbors, and I was home alone one day. My parents divorced when I was 10. So one of my chores was to cut our grass. And when I was 12 years old, I started doing that, and I was out in my backyard. Nobody else was around, but somebody came up behind me and yelled my name really loud, and I jumped, and I thought I was alone. So I turned around to see who it was, and there was nobody there. So it kind of freaked me out a little bit. But even then, I was thinking, okay, maybe it was just some kind of ambient noise over the lawnmower noise, and I wasn't really sure, what I had heard. But I mean, it certainly sounded like my name being called, and not just called, but being yelled, like someone was trying to get my attention. And flash forward about 2 more years, I remember being homesick. Again, I was home by myself. I'm out in the country. That was sort of common back then, but I'm inside my house. It's all locked up. I'm laying on the couch watching TV. Plain as day, loud and clear, heard my name yelled again. And took me right back 2 years prior. And now I'm thinking, okay, wow, that was for real. I think I actually did hear something 2 years before. And that was it as far as anything weird happening to me. And it was enough, though, to really get me interested in reading a lot about ghosts and angels and psychic ability. And I just, gathered this, great interest in anything supernatural, anything from UFOs, ghosts, spontaneous human combustion I was fascinated with. So all this stuff just really, propelled me to when I'm in later years, that drive was still there to learn and understand a little bit more about that. And I was somebody who I call myself, when I started out, an optimistic skeptic. I really wanted to believe all this stuff was true. And I just couldn't. Something was just holding me back, and I'm the kind of person I need to kind of see it to believe it. So I, made a decision at one point to insert myself into this world and just get answers for myself on whether any of it was real. Psychic ability, ghosts, psychics able to clear homes, and it just became a personal study for me to kind of gather my own ideas on faith and the afterlife and what's possible, in the universe.
Yeah, and I know with me, you start having experiences, it makes you think. Because a lot of people with faith and stuff are brought up believing one thing, but then you start having like different experiences and stuff. You say, well, is that all there is? Was that right the whole time, And it really makes you start to wonder, in my book anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had heard of other people. In fact, I went to a high school called Wyoming Area High School, and there were a couple kids a couple years ahead of me in school that their family, this is going back all the way to the early 80s, I believe, they were reporting a haunting in their home not far from our high school. And it later became a book called The Haunted, and a movie was based off of it. And Ed and Lorraine Warren, two very famous investigators, had actually come to the house. And, that was really big back in the 80s, right in the community I went to school in. And the police had to be called out all the time because people were coming. It made the news. It made national news. And people were coming from all over and parking on the street just to take a look at this house. And there were so many mixed opinions back then, whether they were doing this for attention or was it real, and nobody really knew. But, again, it just sort of spurred my interest to see what was possible.
Yeah, I think I actually might have seen something about that. Last Halloween, I think it was, I was watching, they had a special on about all Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases. I think I seen something about that.
Yeah, and it was the Smurl family who had gone through that. And, other than that, they were just your average family. Nothing stood out as far as being odd, with them. And a lot of people didn't believe them, though. And I think, once you get into this and you do start having experiences, and for me, it took a long time. I was actually part of another local team with my wife, and they were great technically at investigating. They taught us a lot of what we liked and didn't like about investigating. But during the 2 years we were with them, I really had no experiences that made my mind up one way or another. And after we created our team, and we wanted to go more into trying to resolve cases if we could, and try to bring in all these different resources to see what worked, what didn't, and could we actually help people stop these hauntings? So it was a long time before I really started experiencing stuff to make up my mind. But once you do, it's almost addicting to have these experiences. And once you see something and experience that, you want to see more and try to really figure out, how is it possible that things are moving in homes, doors, opening and shutting, and things sliding across kitchen tables, lights turning on and off. It's, even though it's scary for a lot of people going through that, coming as an investigator, it's actually, kind of exciting in a way just to experience.
Yeah, when you start getting that, even, I don't know, I get excited, like if I'm out on an investigation myself and something starts happening, I get excited, but I'll about jump out of my skin with excitement when I get home and start reviewing all audio and stuff and actually find something, it's undeniably there that we didn't hear. I always get more excited with that part than what actually happens while I'm there.
Yeah, and historically, I think that's kind of been the same way for us while we're at home. It may seem pretty quiet there, but going through a review, a lot of times, just like you're saying, you might pick up a lot on audio or even something on video in a room that you weren't even in at the time. And that's happened to us a lot where, we'll see a door open or a door shut by itself, or a light turn on or off.
Now, what are your main techniques for when you go into investigations? What do you like to do yourself?
Well, typically what we do prior to even starting the investigation or setting up any equipment, we work with a psychic medium. Like I said, her name is Virginia Centrillo. And we did a lot of testing of her before we even brought her out on cases. And she just absolutely amazed us with the amount of historical information she could get, and even coming up with names of people that we were able to verify had passed away at a location. She comes up with a lot of history even around a home, and, not only what happened inside the home, but maybe around the town. And these are cases that when we first started working with her, we would give her an address to meet us at, like say a mini mart, and we would then have her follow us to the place we were going to. So she had zero information on any of these cases, and case after case, she was just blowing us away with, names of deceased people, the way they died, the way they dressed, maybe their occupation. So it wasn't like, do you know what George? It was like, hey, I got a man here named George. He used to be a mechanic. He wore Iron Maiden T-shirts all the time, and cursed a lot, smoked cigars. So very identifying information as to a particular person, more than just generalizations. So once we were satisfied with the level of her ability there, we knew we could use that to be extremely helpful. So before we start a case, we didn't want to set up any equipment anywhere in a house or building, just because we didn't want her queuing in on those areas as maybe hotspots. So what I do myself and Virginia will do a walkthrough of the property with, at least one of the clients who can verify information. And she'll just start feeding us information of what she feels the clients are actually experiencing and in what rooms. And if she can, she might come up with the name or a couple names and, who she thinks might be doing it. So it's a very quick walkthrough we do of these places, just to get sort of a baseline, some information maybe to jump off the investigation with. So once we finish that, and while we're actually doing that, we have other team members that are falling in behind us. So once we clear a floor, they'll start setting up equipment in various areas of the floor. And when we're completely finished with the walkthrough, I usually jump in and help with the technical setup. And Virginia then will work specifically with the family or the clients, if it's a business, to provide usually some kind of personal information that she comes up with for them. And quite often it ties into the type of activity that's going on in the house anyway. So the stuff we do is we'll set up stationary cameras, closed circuit TV surveillance cameras. And we usually have, about 6 of those set up around the property, along with recording devices. In each of the rooms, we have cameras. We carry camcorders. We have 1 or 2 team that's working on a case. We keep our teams small. So we might only have like 3 to 4 people actually out working on a case. If it's a really big place, maybe 5. But every time a team is out, and we have a controlled area that we set up our monitoring system. It's our staging area. And anytime a team is out, they have a camcorder in their hands, and that's always running. Not only is it a device that you can capture evidence on, but it's also a log of events. So, if you have to check back, say, a recorder, you could look at the camcorder the team had and not only listen to what they were saying to see if maybe they were the cause of that, questionable piece that you caught, but we know where they were, what they were doing. So it gives you like a comparison device. Almost like a control device you can compare the other stuff to. And we have handheld recorders too, audio recorders that we're doing EVP sessions with. So, we'll turn those on and ask some questions. We have different environmental recording devices too, like an air ion meter, EMF meters, of course. Just a variety of technical equipment, a radiation detector, even thermometers. And we try to use all this equipment to, gather as much information as we can. So, let's say that you have a door open somewhere. That's nice to capture on film, but it's even better when maybe you get a voice along with that, or you see a temperature drop, or you get a spike of, gamma radiation along with all that stuff. So the more pieces of the puzzle you can put together, the stronger case you have. So that's kind of where I go is, the initial walkthrough with Virginia, then setting up the equipment, and then Virginia and I work alongside each other as our other teammates are more doing the physical type of stuff. I'm with Virginia, also monitoring physical events, but she's actually giving me the psychic information as we go along, and I'm kind of recording all of that stuff and just seeing what I see as we go.
Yes, like when we go into an investigation, she's not a known psychic, but we took her and proved her quite a bit, and I didn't believe her at first, but she claimed she could get a reading just from a picture alone, like you can send her a picture. I mean, I run that through the test. Oh, I don't know how many times I tried to trip her up just to see, she was telling the truth, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because when you come into, a lot of times I notice when you go to an investigation, you say, okay, if you don't have a psychic or something, okay, nah, I'm tripping up here.
No, that's all right. We constantly test her out, and she kind of knows that, and she likes that. She has fun with it, and she likes to test herself out too, to see what she could come up with. And a lot of times she gets very specific information real easy. She'll see a spirit and just ask, hey, can you give me your name? And she'll get a name loud and clear. She hears it in her head, and or sometimes she gets just letters of a first name. So she might in her mind's eye just see big letter R, and she knows the name would be Robert or something that might start with an R. And we have one guy, we actually include skeptics on our team on purpose because we have somebody on the extreme side being a psychic medium. We wanted to balance that out with skeptics. So we have psychics, the skeptics, and people in between. And, we found skeptics sometimes come up with the best reasons of why activity happens. So we can show them evidence and they could take a look at it, or maybe they were there and witnessed stuff. And we like to see what ideas they come up with. And a lot of times, we lose the skeptics because after they start having all these experiences, they're not so skeptical anymore. But one of our skeptics used to have a little thing that he would do. He'd say, hey, if there's a guy named Bob here, Virginia says you're here and you can hear us, go up to where she is and tell her popcorn. He'll come up with a phrase like popcorn, and he wants to see if Virginia will actually get that information throughout the night. And he's done it, I think probably upwards of maybe 20 times or so. And actually on one case, she did mention popcorn to him. So she has at least one hit. It doesn't work every time, but that was kind of impressive that she did mention that on one night.
Yeah, in my opinion, skeptics actually push the field further than anything. They're more helpful than, all the evidence we gather. Skeptics help more than anything. Yeah,
in a way, I agree. I mean, the truth is the truth, and they could try to rationalize stuff in all kinds of ways, but a lot of times, one of our skeptics I'll run evidence by, and he's left with, you got me on this one. So it's good that they're there and they're taking a look at this stuff, and they can at least admit that there's no rational explanation for a lot of stuff.
Now, when you're going into an investigation, would you have a skeptic mindset when you're going in, or you let the investigation unfold as it would, and from there?
Yeah, I like to basically kind of say we're objective. I don't want to say we're skeptical. We listen to the reports or the claims that the clients have, keeping in mind that they might be misperceiving a lot of it, or all of it in some cases. We found, an interesting thing happens a lot of times. If you have one person that, maybe they're really into all these paranormal shows, but they're also a little spooked, and all of a sudden they start reporting seeing stuff in the home, and maybe there's not a ghost there, but it's just natural stuff. And now they're sort of in that mindset that, we got a ghost in the house because a couple weird things happen. Sometimes other people jump on the bandwagon because now they got it in their head, and they're starting to report stuff, and there's nothing really there, but they've just all kind of wound each other up. That kind of happens sometimes. But I don't know, it's very helpful, working with the medium again, because we had to kind of cross-train her as an investigator as well. So we had to kind of ground her a little bit and say, listen, they're reporting this stuff. And, we don't say that up front, but like through the walkthrough, they'll confirm stuff. So she knows what they're kind of reporting. She'll know right away, spiritually, whether that's correct or not, but there might be physical activity that people are reporting that she didn't pick up on that she will debunk a lot of times, herself, because we train her to be, very objective, take the reports and just listen to them. But we're not doing them any service if we're, validating all the reports, especially if maybe some of them are valid, but some of them aren't. The problem is if we clear a house and the ghost is gone, this other stuff is still going to go on because it's natural stuff. So we try to figure out what that is and then explain it to them. And when they experience stuff, here's the cause. It's not a ghost, but this is just normal stuff. And, hopefully they're not getting as spooked out from it. But yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm skeptical, more objective. I let the case, make its case, so to speak. And, we put anything physical together with, the psychic information, the historical reports of what's going on, and just kind of see where it leads us.
I don't know if you've ever had this happen on a investigation, but I've had a couple times. When I run an EVP, I don't ever hold the recorder in my hand. I have it on one of the little like pistol grip tripods that you fold the legs out, and I set it down in a solid location. That way you ain't bumping the mic doing this, and I always have a external microphone hooked to it, running right around 20 decibels, and I have the camera mic set to the same sensitivity. But there's times you're in the same room and you'll hear a clear voice coming through on the recorder, but you can't find it nowhere. Going from the microphone, the audio on the video, it's set to the same sensitivity, but you can't find it anywhere.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we like to see quite often, because I think it further validates it as being authentic. And, one of the theories out there is that these voices come through in, like these electromagnetic pulses, and that might only be so wide. So, if you have a recorder and, several times we might have several recorders running in the same room. So, where we put the cameras, we always have a stationary recorder, but then we're carrying them also. And then we have a camcorder on top of it. So they're usually in different parts of a room. And if we capture a voice on one recorder, we cross-reference those with every other recorder, including recorders outside that room. And it's great when you have even 3 recorders running and you get a voice or several words on one of the recorders. And, it sort of would make sense that magnetic pulse would only be, a certain width. And it's, the other recorders were out of range. So they didn't pick it up, but that imprint, was in the right area at the right time and was able to capture it. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And we kind of like when that happens.
Now, you mentioned about the magnetic pulse coming through, like, for the spirits to speak. Have you ever tried using old, what are they called now? Cassette recorder. Like the magnetic strip on there?
Yeah, when we first started, we actually had a cassette recorder, and I don't know. I don't know if we had any better results with those as compared to switching to some of the older digital recorders. Virginia, our medium, used to use them all the time and swears by them. That would be her preference. But I don't know. We've used a wide variety of recorders throughout the years, and we kind of have a lot of success with some older recorders that don't have really great filters, or not filters, but insulation around the circuit boards, which would allow different frequencies or magnetic interference to come in, which these voices might be riding on. So they're not blocking out a lot of the outside contamination like the new high def, recorders do. And they have a lot of natural hiss in the background, the white noise that a lot of investigators like. The only problem with that, when we run those, we're always running the high def recorders as well. We found out that there's a lot of stuff out there that will mimic voices, and they sound like voices or a sentence. Just as an example, you had mentioned about holding the recorder and you put it down. And that's one of the things that we learned too, is to always set a recorder down. If you're doing an EVP session, don't hold it in your hand, because, if it's rubbing on something or your coat, or maybe your coat's making some noise, 6 inches away from the recorder, you get this little shuffling type noises on there, and they kind of sound like voices on the recorder sometimes. And we learned a good lesson one time. We thought we had some great words. We did this massive, it used to be an old manufacturing building, and they were having some activity in it. And in one of the old loading bays, they were picking up this young girl in this really old dress. And I don't know why it would be in a loading bay, but on their security cameras, they were, the motion detectors were actually going off. They'd come in the morning and see that it went off during the night, and there'd be this little, child that they've seen on video. So we were working that area pretty good, and it sounded like we were coming up with these whispery voices. And when we compared that to our camcorder, very clearly you could hear it was the grit that was underneath their shoes, and their shoes would make, were making noises at the same time when we lined it up. So the whispering voices were kind of ruled out. And so we kind of checked the older recorders a little bit better to make sure that we don't have that kind of contamination. Those whispery voices are really tough sometimes, but, I don't know, the old recorders are good too. And they have the same exact problem though, with the hiss in the background and picking up a lot of contamination. So, we've used them in the past. We don't anymore, but, you just have to use a little extra caution when you're using those. But I think we did pick up a little bit more on those than these new high def recorders, just because of the insulation around them.
Yeah, I think with the new high def ones, a lot of time they cut out that background noise, and sometimes even the background noise is louder than what, the voices you find the voices on there, and you have to enhance them, bring up the audio on that section. The background noise is still a little bit overpowering from that, so if it's cutting out the background noise, what else are you losing?
Yeah, I mean, those recorders are fantastic when you don't want any noise, but they have so many filters in them that you're really losing a lot by using them. Now, something really cool that we had happened a couple times, and the only reason, again, that we knew this happened was because we scatter recorders all over the place as control devices when we're doing this. So if we have 6 cameras out, we have at least 6 recorders out just with the cameras. And then, like I said, we hold some in our hands when we're going around and, working mobile, and work off of those when we turn them on. So we generally have a lot of devices to compare stuff with. It's almost the opposite of what we were just talking about, where you have, say 3 recorders in a room or 2 recorders, and it only shows up on one. We've actually had instances where we've gotten the same words at the same time on multiple levels of a home, which in, normal situations, there's no way you would get, just like an average inside voice recorded in the basement, in the attic, and the floors in between, all of them, all at the same time. How that happened, I'm not sure, but we've had that a couple times where we've gotten the same exact voice on multiple recorders throughout a home.
Well, I never experienced that one. That would be something cool to experience myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare. I think it only happened 2 times, but it was pretty wild. And again, I have no explanation on how that would be if these pulses are coming in. The only thing I could say is it had to be really wide. I'm not sure what would make the difference for a wide field of an E impulse compared to a more narrow one. I don't know what would cause that or how that even happened. And going back then, we didn't really have a lot of measurements of regular electromagnetic fields in a home. So, it's possible, I guess, if you have a home that maybe has these huge natural magnetic fields in a home, just due to like maybe outside wiring or something like that. A house is located right next to these high tension power lines. Maybe that could magnify it somehow. I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty wild to find that. I mean, it was the same exact intensity was the crazy thing too. So like if you picked up a voice in the attic, you would expect it to be quieter down on the first floor if it's a, 2-story in an attic. But it was the same exact intensity on every single recorder. It was really wild.
No, that kind of has me speechless on what to say on that one. You'd think even you'd have like a funnel effect if there's some sort of like vent going through the house there,
Right, yeah.
But not the same intensity. You'd think you'd have like an echo effect or might be louder. But anyhow, have you seen any of these apps they have going around now? Do you guys ever mess around with any of them just on your own at home or anything?
No, not any like Ghost Finder apps or anything like that use, off of a cell phone. We've used a couple apps, made more for, physics type applications where you can actually use like the accelerometer and the magnetometer and stuff within, like an iPad or a cell phone. And, we've had some success with that. Even like they'll the meter will show a graph or a waveform. So you can turn on that particular app and show like a flatline accelerometer and like magnetometer and stuff. So, the phone is laying flat on a table while this app is running. It's just showing a flat line. However, if you pick it up and move it physically with your hands, you'll start getting these spikes in the wave. And the phone is moving, and that's what it's made for such things as the guidance system and apps, the map apps and stuff like that. It can tell your speed and everything. It knows the phone is moving. So, our thought was, well, let's use this to see if, we know the phone or the tablet is sitting still on a table. Are we going to get these spikes that it's moving? So it would be the environment moving around the device rather than the device moving itself or something interfering with the device. And we've had several times where we've had that, just, a phone running this app, and all of a sudden we start getting spikes. And another cool thing about working with a credible medium, she's not watching that, but at the same time, she would report, hey, I just felt this energy come into the room while we're watching these spikes happen on our phone. But we haven't really gotten into using any of the apps, for voices or locating ghosts or anything in buildings.
I never heard of that app to use the accelerometer. So would that kind of act like a geophone, like you'd see them using on TV and stuff, like how they set down like the vibrate, even if it's slight vibration to like a table or something, it'd start picking it up. Is that what you're?
Yeah, exactly. Huh. And you could do that. You could set it, down. The accelerometer is going to just show a flat line while a phone is sitting still. And if you tap on the table, you'll see spikes happen there. So it could be used as a geophone. If you get these massive spikes and nobody's touching anything, then, it's got to be the environment moving around the phone or something physically affecting the electronics inside the phone. But something is happening in the environment there. And, once you see that happening, you can get some of the other meters in that location and, see if you're getting, EM spikes or, maybe throw a recorder in there, see if you can get any voices.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people don't really trust them, like the apps and stuff. Like, I was messing around with the one ghost tube. We were just sitting at the house messing around, Everyone, because it was all over the internet, they swore by it. And so I had my recorder going, and I had that go, and it's popping up at Ovulus, at whatever,
Yeah.
And the only weird thing that happened was it came through and said a word through the phone, but listening to the voice recorder after that, you could hear a physical voice that overrode the sound of the phone saying the same exact thing at the same time.
It's pretty wild.
I went, we were just messing around with probably about 15 minutes. The whole time you could hear, over the recorder, you could hear like the robotic sound coming from the phone. But then that one word, I can't remember what that word is now, but it was an actual voice over that robotic sound.
Now, I can say this. The cases that we primarily do, because we're trying to resolve the cases, we're working at removing anything that's there. So it's usually like a one night investigation and hopefully we cleanse the house and it's done. So it doesn't give us a chance to go in there and work with the same spirits that might be there over and over. Where a friend of mine runs a team, and they had access to this old farmhouse. It was unoccupied. And the owners were gracious enough to let them go in as much as they wanted to. And they also worked with a medium who went in there and gave them kind of an idea of who she felt was there. And they worked with a novelist. And they weren't really sure what to think of it in the beginning. And, they wanted to test it out. They found out that after so many visits there, they started getting some accurate answers on there to the point where they said, questions like who's pulling into the driveway, and it actually said the name of the medium. And, things like that happened on more than one occasion. So it was very verifiable information that they were getting off of this. And it made sense to the circumstance at the time and what they were talking about. So, I've kind of come up with some ideas that if, compared to us where we might be in the same spot just once, we're at a house one night, done. If you have the opportunity to keep visiting the same place, or it might be a place that multiple teams come in and they're all using the same equipment, that gives the spirits on the other side a chance to actually understand how to interact using some of this equipment. Because if you just walk in one time and say, hey, use this box to, say words, I'm not sure they would really even have a clue how to do that. But, through trial and error, I think after time using the same equipment, you could start getting responses because you're having time, for everybody on both sides to interact with it.
Yeah, see, when I go for an investigation, I like to do one. I always do the primary investigation, but I always want to go back probably 4 or 5 times at least before I start taking the next steps, because in my mind, a lot of that might be, if it's an intelligent haunt, what I believe is they're just kind of sitting back, figuring out who you are, what you're doing in their space. But as you come around more, they'll get more comfortable. Just same situation as like a living person,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's how people look at ghosts as these very mystical type creatures, but essentially they're just people, people without bodies. It's a little strange, but you have to treat them as such. And that's exactly the way we sort of look at it too. And in fact, sometimes we have fears that, the cases where people really want some evidence documented, when we're taking a medium in that can really connect with them and have a conversation with them of sorts, we often think, are we kind of reducing our chance of getting physical activity because, we might not hear them ourselves. So they might try physical things to get our attention, where they could just go right to Virginia and communicate with her. So they don't need to do anything physical. So we often wonder if we're hindering a physical investigation when she's along sometimes. But then we've had cases where, we seem to have entities there that pay no attention to us at all, but physical stuff is going on. And they don't care about, Virginia or anything else. Just, you get, cupboards that open or footsteps or, even audible voices. And it's kind of funny watching Virginia, who, seems to interact with spirits all the time, but she doesn't see the physical activity a lot. So she gets just as excited as we do when something physical happens, because normally she's just communicating, and sometimes it's all in her head. And she might even get an image of somebody in her head, not necessarily seeing them there, but she's seeing these people in her mind. But when you get a door slams or something goes flying across the room, her, even as a medium, gets excited to see the physical stuff.
What's the most interesting investigation you've ever been on?
Wow, we had a couple. The number one, I guess I would have to say, was a home in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. The reports were so kind of extreme as far as the intensity, the amount. It was like daily, all day long, day, night. They were reporting, not only seeing these dark, shadowy figures, but they had things like doors opening and closing. They come downstairs in the morning and find like all their cupboard and drawers open in the kitchen, stuff all over the floor. They found dining room chairs placed very neatly on top of a dining room table. They'd have wine. They had a cellar. They actually sold wine. They imported it and sold wine, and they stored a lot of it in their basement of this home. And they'd have wine bottles fly off the shelves and smash on the concrete floor. Quarters would seemingly appear out of nowhere and fly all over the house. They had toys turning on and off. They had an electric keyboard with illuminated keys that started playing all by itself one time, and it wasn't even plugged in. They had a ceiling fan that wasn't hooked up to any wiring start to spin. They claimed on one occasion they sort of lost their relatively newborn. I think she was only a couple months old, not old enough to walk yet, but was in a bassinet in the master bedroom. They went upstairs a little while later to check on her, and she wasn't there, and nobody else was in the house. They searched the house and found the baby in the bedroom next to the master bedroom underneath a comforter, sleeping. So they were really getting freaked out, and some of it was extreme. I wasn't sure whether to believe some of it, all of it, but it gave us an opportunity, either number one, to go and really debunk a lot of stuff, which sometimes is kind of fun to do, and try to get to the bottom of the activity. But I thought even if half of what they were reporting was true, that gave us an exceptional chance at documenting physical stuff. Because like most of the cases we get, a lot of people have more, they have more experiences like seeing a shadow or maybe even a ghost or hearing stuff as opposed to physical things happening. This case was almost all physical stuff happening. And every now and then they'd see these shadows, but it was just nonstop physical stuff happening in the house. So we went down there, and I mean, it wasn't long where we started physically seeing a lot of this stuff, toys turning on, doors opening and closing. We caught a shadow figure on our camera, quarters flying across rooms. Our medium was, the way she put it, she felt like somebody threw a sack over her head and yanked it backwards and started to choke her. So we just had this like amazing amount of physical activity, which I have to say, if I had any doubts of ghosts prior to this, it completely solidified the possibility of them being there, just because I was seeing this stuff with my own eyes. And, I ended up apologizing to these people later on because I didn't really believe them in the beginning, and they picked that up and called me out on it. And, I felt bad, but it was just so over the top. And we experienced almost every single thing they reported, except for the baby being moved and the chairs being placed on top of the table. But, that was something that I think we had 4 people on our first visit and 3 people on the second and 4 people on the third. We were there 3 times to do physical investigations, and every single person was witnessing all this stuff going on. So it was just an amazing case. It was our longest case. It took, as far as resolving stuff, it took us almost 2 years working with this family to try to resolve it. And it was just so amazing. I actually wrote a book on it called The Upper Darby Poltergeist. And there's a lot of pictures of some of the stuff that went on in the home. And our website, it's theppa.net for the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. Theppa.net, under our case files, you can go on there and look at a lot of the evidence that we captured. The amount of EVPs that we had, and just all these strange ambient noises. We left the equipment running for an hour while we weren't there. We cleared the house out because they said they'd come home and find it trashed all the time. The amount of noise in there was just incredible. It sounded like, a circus in there. While we were out of the house, like quarters, you could hear quarters hitting things. We captured quarters on video being thrown across the room, and there's nobody there. It sounded like somebody in boots stomping their way up their stairs, and dresser drawers like opening and stuff like that. It was just an incredible amount of noise. It got so redundant, the same noises we were hearing, even that, we stopped saving them all after a while, because I could hear a little squeak and a ding off this one handle on a dresser that, we got 3 or 4 times in different places, and we just stopped recording that, saving the recording of that after a while. So that was probably the most amazing case I had. And it just had so much involvement. We had 2 human spirits in there. According to Virginia, we had this situation with voodoo, that something was manifested and sent to this family, and there was this dark entity in the home, and we think that's what had choked Virginia. And then we had several teenage kids in there that, we were really worried about all the physical activity maybe being like psychokinetic off of these kids that we had to look at. So it was just this whole combination of all this crazy stuff going on there. And, in the book, I said that, hopefully it's not a once in a lifetime opportunity to experience a house like that. But so far, we haven't seen anything even closely related to it. It's just such an overwhelmingly active place every single time we were there, day and night. We got some of the best evidence during the day there.
You said during the day. That brings up a good question. Oh, not a good question. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I always get confused on why people think ghost activity only happens at night. I talked to actually quite a bit of people that are willing to dismiss anything they can't explain that's during the day. But the moment the sun goes down, it's automatically paranormal or, ghost activity of some sort.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And, we get asked that a lot ourselves, like, do you just investigate at night, or why are there, more ghosts out at night? And I think one reason is people are kind of programmed that from watching a lot of the paranormal shows, is because they're usually at night. Any horror movie, the stuff happens at night. You wake up in the morning and the sun's up and everything's nice and calm and quiet again. But I think a large part of it too, most people work during the day and the house is more empty during the day. And, there might be stuff going on there, or like maybe apparitions even may be easier to see, during dim light or in the dark, even where you have just a little bit of light. But I think the house, is getting a lot quieter. Things are settling down. People are paying a little bit more attention to different sounds of the house and stuff. And even outside is a lot quieter. In some of the more urban areas, maybe where you have a lot of street traffic, people walking down the sidewalk and stuff, that kind of quiets down a little bit. And I think people are just a little more aware of what's going on in the house, and there's more people there. So they're going to have more experiences at night. But then we talk to a lot of people that, there might be, the kids are out of the house, one of the spouses are out at work, and somebody's home, and they see a ghost walk right down the hallway, or, they'll have a door slam, or, something will go flying off a shelf. So, I think, it's just as active during the day, but it's just a lot less noticed by people. Or like you said, I think they dismiss it because there's just a lot of other noise going on. So, they hear a bang or something, they're not really paying attention to it because of all the noise outside like they would during the day.
Now, you brought up about the TV shows and the movies. Do you think the Hollywoodized paranormal shows you see on TV benefited the field, or do you think they hurt the field in any way?
Both, actually. As long as they're not over dramatized, generally I think they're kind of helpful, because, if you go back, probably even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people didn't want to talk about that stuff at all, and even that case that I mentioned earlier, it was in Exeter, Pennsylvania. Those people, they really took some hard hits by the public just because they thought they were crazy, and I think a lot of people had activity. They were scared, but they were also scared to report that. And they weren't really sure who to even call to help, other than maybe your local church. And sometimes they even thought you were crazy or they just didn't know what to do. So in a way, I think it helped normalize it a little bit where, number one, you have a lot more teams out there working on this stuff now because of the interest. And, it's just a lot easier, I think, for some people to call in a team, even though it might be a little bit weird still for people to have a team like that come in. People aren't as scared to call for help and worry about being criticized by other people for having a team come in. So I think in that respect, it's really helpful. Some of them are way over dramatized, and I think they have the ability to scare people even more. And, if somebody has something kind of subtle going on in their house, they're used to, demon, or, this thing's going to hurt me or whatever. And so they're a little bit worried that whatever they have is going to hurt them. And that's not always the case. So I don't know. Some shows are, kind of out there too. I'm not going to mention any names, but, one group was showing they caught a spirit, put it in a box, blew up the box and got rid of the spirits. That's just kind of crazy. So, it's helpful in a way. I would say it's probably more helpful that it's really brought this whole entire field to the forefront, and people have more of an interest in it now than ever. And one thing that I've said before, if you really take a look at how many teams are out there, there's thousands of teams just in the United States, and that's just one country, but thousands of teams out there. Some of them get some really amazing evidence, and some of these people are very well educated. I mean, you have physicists working on this stuff, and if this field was fake, like a lot of skeptics say, or non-believers, ghosts aren't real. Being that there's so many people that are either well educated or well experienced in investigating, what we should be finding is, this should be going away because nobody's getting anything. But what we're finding is the opposite. Like, all these teams are coming up with stuff, and it's only getting more popular, which tells me it's sort of legitimizing that, activity is real. People are experiencing it. People are documenting it. And, it's only growing in interest.
Yeah, see, I feel the same way that, Hollywood and that aspect helped bring it to the forefront. But also, I feel what they show on there kind of like tricks people's minds at home. And because I had this thought that you could have a non-harmful entity, but the moment you start showing fear, you have all this fear build up and something starts happening. But if you start seeing a physical apparition, it's going to come and appear to you in a terrifying way instead of a more natural sense.
Yeah.
Because one thing I always get is a man with red eyes. And I feel that's like, because just that fear gets into your head so much, you're manifesting that image yourself instead of seeing what's actually there.
Yeah, that's a real good point. And, speaking with so many mediums over the years and people who do see stuff, I think a lot of times they claim that just like you said, they might see stuff in their frame of mind, and a lot of it might be symbolism that's trying to be, displayed to a particular person, but they're misinterpreting it as something evil, and just because of what they have in the back of their minds, and somebody else in the same place might see something completely different. And I even think, again, just from speaking with so many people over the years, that, a ghost may not manifest itself the same way all the time. And that might be, I don't know, first of all, if a ghost can physically manifest itself at will, or sometimes it's just spontaneous. They have no control when that happens. Just the environment was right at that particular time and it happens. a lot of times, mediums will say, they can't show themselves to certain people who'd be a little bit more open to it. But I think it has a lot to do with the ghost itself. I think it has a lot to do with the person witnessing that and their, physical health that day and how tired they are. And, when they ate last, how open they are and receptive they are, what the weather conditions are. There's probably all of these certain conditions that would make a ghost appear to somebody, the way they're observing it, appear one way on one day and different on another day. We've had people report seeing this like grandmotherly figure in the baby's bedroom every now and then, but then they also report, I'm seeing this black mass, and grandmother is kind of comforting. The black mass is really scary. And then, we'll have our medium come in and she'll say, that's the same figure that you're seeing all the time. You're just seeing it in a different way on a particular day. So it might be part because of the spirit, but it's probably a lot to do with who's receiving it on that particular day. I don't know, but, one thing I think, when you look at all these TV shows, it definitely has the, just like you said, it has the problem of putting preconceived ideas in people's heads. And a lot of them like to go with the scary route, and, they have the scary music and special effects and startling moments and stuff. So that kind of freaks people out sometimes. And then they experience something that's really subtle, like you said, and it means no harm to anybody, but now they're just freaking out and they're afraid if they have kids, it's going to hurt my kids. And, there's no counterbalance of like some of these stories that we come up with, these spirits are stuck, could be because of some kind of traumatic event. And they're just looking for help. And you got a real dramatic story on your hand. It's not scary at all, but it's, kind of heartbreaking in a way. And they don't show those on TV. They all go for the scare factor because that sells, I guess. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, about the programming and, how people react to it.
No, I don't want to completely for anyone listening, completely dismiss the claim of a man with red eyes, because I myself, we're in Clearfield County here. About 8 years ago, I was driving along 322 from Clearfield to DuBois. I was going along Rockton Mountain there. I think around 10 o'clock at night. I was the only one going out the highway. On the one straight stretch, I seen some up ahead of me, and as I got closer, I actually seen a man standing there. You couldn't see a face, but he had like a wide brim hat, a trench coat, and you seen red eyes. By the time the car got, I'd say 10 to 15 feet from where he was, it was just gone. I seen it clear as day driving out through there. Well, of course, that was back before dash cams were a big popular thing, so I was kind of screwed on that part to go back and review. But
yeah, I don't think we've had many reports of like human figures with red eyes. We had one that very distinctly, I remember the case where they had something that they were describing as like either an extremely large dog or maybe even like a wolf-like creature that was seen inside a home with red eyes, where a couple people have claimed to see it, jump right through a wall, with obviously no damage to the wall, but they claim they've seen it inside and outside their house. And that had very distinct red eyes. That was one of the things that stood out for them.
It actually said about the dog, when I started looking into because I heard the claims hundreds of times. So I started looking into it thinking, okay, where could this be coming from? What I found was, one I kept finding was a shapeshifter, they said, that would go between a man and a dog. A large black dog to a tall man. It's folklore out of Germany, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common in the United States as well. We had a lot of Native Americans, in the country, and Pennsylvania was loaded with them. And, they had shaman, and they were also believed to be shapeshifters. And Virginia, on several cases, had come up with very similar stories where she felt that they had, a situation at a property where The house itself wasn't haunted, but they had a lot of activity on the land prior to the house even being built. The house was built on Native American land where these people lived, and they died, and they stayed. And every now and then she'll say, "I think we have a shapeshifter here that either is changing into a different looking humanoid type of being or some type of animal."
Because you mentioned like ground being haunted. Everything when I come to ground, stuff happening on grounds, for me it seems to lead back to the native spirits, from native tribes. Like my grandparents' house where I grew up at, it was this stereotype house. It was built in mid to late 1800s for the coal miners, and it stayed in the family the whole time. We would hear all kinds of noises in the house, from pianos playing to people pounding like they're building something, classical music, and no one listened to classical music. Well, my uncle, also in the house, started performing seances in the room that all these sounds were coming from, so that could have been tied to it. But me and my mother were there. We were inside talking. We went outside to have a cigarette. And the only part of the conversation that was said outside the house was the woods, where just happened to be a group of kids walking down the alleyways. It was on an alleyway at a dead-end road, and the yard butted up with woods. And they said, "Are you talking about all the people coming running out of the woods at night with axes?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And they went through and told the story. They were going back to their campsite they had back there, actually the night prior. They said they're walking back, all of a sudden they heard these drum sounds and people screaming, and there was like a crowd of people running after them with carrying axes.
Wow, that's kind of unsettling.
Yeah, and then they said that, and they're like, "Well, we're going back there to camp anyhow." I was like, "All right, you go for it." And then after they left, I looked at my mom. I was like, "That was weird, right?" She said, "Yeah, the part that I only said the woods outside, and they knew exactly what we were talking about." Because she was going along saying, growing up there, she'd have the same experience over and over whenever she'd be walking home late. It's like a group of people running out of there carrying axes.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be extreme even for people, I think, who have had normal experiences.
Right around the same time as that, actually, an ex-girlfriend of mine was out in my car waiting for me. I ran inside to get some. I come outside, and she started yelling at me. She's like, "Why were you just standing behind the car?" I said, "I wasn't standing behind the car. I just came out the door." She said, "No, you were standing outside for about 10 minutes there." I said, "No, I was inside." I said, "But I also seen a shadow going down towards the old cattle barn over there."
We had some interesting experiences at the home where I mentioned that wolf-like creature with the red eyes, where we think we probably had some Native American activity happening outside. And unfortunately, we did 2 physical investigations there, and we were supposed to return with our medium in the future. And in between, the homeowner, this was an old homestead. Nobody lived there, but various family members would come and stay there once in a while. It was actually considered a mansion back in the early railroading days in Pennsylvania. But by today's standards, it's small, but it was a large house back then, and it's 2 stories, but there are a lot of rooms in the home. But we had some really good experiences in there, and for the most part, the family felt it was generationally haunted. So, a lot of family members from the past, but there was also some negative stuff in there that they were a little bit concerned about. And we didn't experience this wolf-like creature, but we heard a lot of stories from generations that used to stay there as well, and I found those interesting. And one that kind of stood out for me is that it was a mom and dad who had lived there, and they had, I think it was 3 kids. And dad used to work, mom was home taking care of the kids. And when the mailman would come, it was a little bit later in the day, mom would make all 3 kids come out and go get the mail with her. And the neighbor, who was one of the clients who asked us to come in, was a relative of the homeowner who sometimes would stay there as well. But all the same family. Like, she was saying that she remembers being told stories like this as a child, about grandma, walking the kids out there, or, dad used to come home from work after dark, and mom would go out there to meet him in the driveway and also pack up all the kids and get them out of the house. And although they wouldn't really discuss like why that would happen, she said it was always stories like that made them believe that the haunting there was going on for quite some time. And mom was really concerned about leaving the kids in there while she was out of the house. And anytime she was outside, she would have to take them all out. And that was one of the biggest things that, it was this woman's niece, I believe, remembers from, the older days. And one thing that sort of stood out to us when we first went into the home, it was wall-to-wall Christian artifacts. Jesus was hanging everywhere on the walls, statues. Mother Mary was in there, crucifixes, crosses. It was actually a little unsettling, kind of spooky when you turn the lights off and you have a 3-foot statue of Mother Mary staring at you in the dark. But, it was obvious that, they were either super, super religious or maybe trying to ward off something. I'm not quite sure.
We're going to have to call that an episode for this one. Mark, can you tell the people where they can find you again?
Yeah, the best place is our website. It's the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, and the web address is just theppa.net. And that's got contact info on there, and also a case files page where you could jump on there and look at a lot of cases we did, and you'll see asterisks next to case file numbers that you can actually see some of the evidence that we captured.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on here. It was a pretty good conversation going.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love, talking to people about this stuff because, the average, person you work with or whatever, is, only interested to a certain level. But, I love thinking about this stuff and hearing other thoughts and ideas on the subject.